In the news this week, we'll be talking about a wood-paneled in-win case following up on something they tried to do in 2017 before the Fractal North, but with the Fractal North's success, we're going to be seeing more wood-paneled cases actually coming to market. Additionally, we'll be talking about rumors of AMD Zen 5 CPUs allegedly being in mass production. We'll be going over Ubisoft and the RX 7900 XT getting price cuts, among plenty of other stories. Let's get started. Before that, this video is brought to you by ID Cooling and the Frozen A620 series air coolers. The Frozen A620 coolers use a dual tower, dual fan design and come in both ARGB and non-RGB variants. ID Cooling has remained largely value-focused while keeping performance as good as possible for the price. This is something we talked about with the 216 previously. Check out the A620 for a dual tower cooler for your mid-range gaming PCs at the link in the description below. Up first, InWin announced an interesting full tower case mixing wood and metal this year at CES. It's called the F5, but somehow it's not a refresh. This has some unique aesthetics and features to it. It's available in two unusual colorways, either various shades of blue with tinted glass or white with maple wood trim. This is another product following the trend of adding either real wood or wood grain to components, like on the Phetdara and the Fractal North cases. And to be fair to InWin, they did technically do this before Fractal. We actually reported on this back in 2017 when InWin had some wooden case concepts. At the time, the company showed off a few wood-paneled cases well before Fractal's famous North, but InWin wasn't able to successfully and widely launch the products, giving way to Fractal taking the lead with the idea. The execution of Fractal's North was nearly perfect and deserved every ounce of its success, and InWin is now returning to the wood panel market with something that looks like it'll actually hit wide retail. For the new case, some of the panels are reconfigurable in a sort of modular buzzword type of way. InWin, we think, puts maybe a little bit too much emphasis on this gimmick because it really is just those two top and front panels. But the internal layout is interesting. The power supply is top mounted, which is at this point basically a throwback feature. This gives 230 millimeters of room for even the longest of power supplies, like the venerable EVGA 1600 watt T2. The power supply is mounted sideways to allow room for up to 420 millimeter radiator mounted sideways in the top, pulling air from the main chamber and blowing it into the top right area with the power supply. It also comes with three 140 millimeter fans included and supports both horizontal and vertical GPU mounting out of the box. And it comes with a GPU support stick. However, there's no PCIe riser included by default. That can be viewed as either cost savings for people who aren't interested in vertical mounting or an annoyance for those who are. We think it's generally better for you to just buy your own if you want to mount it vertically to save some money overall in the case, and then you get to choose. The F5 also features support for motherboards that have their connectors on the backside, specifically the Asus BTF and MSI Back Connect motherboards. Compatibility with any other rear connector boards launched in the future by other brands is not guaranteed because it's not standardized yet. Up next, AMD's next generation of mainstream desktop CPUs, codenamed Granite Ridge, is rumored to be in mass production according to hardware leaker Kepler L2 on Twitter. The thread in question has the original post hidden, but when another user replied asking, "Is Granite Ridge already in mass production?" Kepler responded with, "Yeah." Sometimes these leakers are incredibly cryptic with their information. For example, this response, "Yeah." Could mean anything, but that's what we're here for. It's to try and interpret what they mean. We think they mean yes. It's a synonym for yeah. That's why you come to us for the news. Another user posted a follow-up question in regard to chipsets, quote, "Any info on X770? Finally, a single chipset solution with 4 PCIe 5 between SoC and chipset." Kepler replied, "No, Prom 21 will remain the chipset for now." Prom 21 is the short name for AMD's Promontory 21 chipset that provides additional I/O on all of the current AM5 motherboards. One chip is used on chipsets like B650 or B650E, for example, and 2 chipsets are used for X670E and X670 as an example. Hardware and its write-up of this rumor made a good point, which is that we don't know if mass production here means mass production of the silicon at the fabs, the TSMC, or it means mass production of the actual packaged, finalized CPU. Either way, though, this could mean that AMD is preparing to make an official announcement for its Ryzen CPUs sometime within the next grouping of normal events where announcements are made. Computex would be the next major one if AMD doesn't decide to say something before then. At this point, though, the companies often slightly decouple, but typically align with major industry events. Computex is in June this year, so we'll see what happens. But AMD probably doesn't feel particularly pressured right now by Intel's 14th gen. The next thing they'd really have to look out for would probably be Arrow Lake, at least in desktop. The 7800X3D right now still beats the 14900K in many gaming scenarios, and it does so with less power and for less money, as we talked about in our CPU efficiency testing. So not a ton of pressure there. Hopefully, though, as just some commentary, AMD doesn't become so dominant that it mirrors what Intel used to be after Sandy Bridge, where Intel didn't need to do things anymore. It just kind of sat there and slightly refreshed things for like a decade. Led to a lot of stagnation in the CPU market. That was the period when GPU reviews were far more exciting than CPU reviews ever were, because CPU reviews, you had Intel doing boring refreshes and AMD, which was just sad, if it even had anything to launch that particular year, going back that far. Now it's GPUs that typically are getting the refresh cycles more frequently, and CPUs have been a really exciting market. Anyway, we'll see what this does, but hopefully AMD doesn't end up being the only viable option like Intel was back in the day. Up next, AMD's 7900 XT, while on the topic of this company, has come down in price now. So when we last did a major update on the 7900 XT, it was just before or around, just before Black Friday. We bought one for $720, and then the prices went back up, and then they came down for Black Friday, and then they went back up again, and now they're coming back down again. It's like a physics quote, and here's something about things going up and coming down, except it misses the part about and then going back up again. It looks like prices now are down to $750 for at least this quarter of 2024. Definitely a response to the launch of the new RTX Super Series, which include cards from $600 to $1,000. We spotted a couple different models of the 7900 XT that already had their price reduced on Newegg. The lowest range from $710 to $730 at the time of writing, and that's down from where they were sitting before at around $760 with an official $800 MSRP at the time. That lowest $710 price we spotted helps AMD for value as compared to, say, a 4070 Super, which starts lower at $600, but when you look at partner models, it creeps up a bit. Even still, at $600 versus $710, it's not always clear which one's the winner depending on what it is you're planning to do with the card. Our full review of the 4070 Super is up on the channel, so you can check that out if you haven't yet. We still have the 4070 Ti Super review coming soon and the 4080 Super review at the end of the month, so check back for those reviews to get a progressively wider picture of the mid to high range of the GPU market. We'll have some new tests and new games in the Ti Super review as well, so you'll definitely want to check those out because a lot of new numbers and games to look at. As for whether those 7900 XT price cuts will stick around, we don't know. Asus certainly hasn't gotten the memo yet with its $890 tough version of the card. Definitely not worth it, by the way. And AMD has a long history at this point of playing games with temporary price reductions that become effectively permanent. Up next, MSI confirms sort of 10 years of the Claw. This is where we would insert an interruption with the Toy Story, the Claw, Aliens quote, but I don't want to be copyright claimed, so just imagine it. Or you pause, go look it up, and come back, get to the full experience of what we would do if there weren't automatic copyright claims on things that are fair use in our opinions. Anyway, it looks suspiciously like a black ROG Ally, and this is from an IGN interview of MSI at CES. So we reported on the Claw previously, but the company now has some additional information in its interview where for some reason it felt confident to reveal to IGN that it's working on the Claw 2, 3, and 4. That is a surprising amount of confidence for a product that is basically just now getting revealed, but probably a good sign for how seriously MSI is taking the new market segment and its plans for long-term support. IGN asked about lifespan for the Claw, and MSI indicated a 2 to 3 year cycle. They said, quote, "So just like our laptops, our aim for users who use this will be roughly 2 to 3 years because game titles demand a lot more every 2 to 3 years. So at least minimum, that kind of stuff. Obviously, if you play retro games, you can play MSI Claw for 10 years. MSI continued and surprise announced the next 3 iterations, saying, quote, "So this will be only the first version of our Claw. We're anticipating to come out with a version 2, 3, and 4 down the road, and it's already in the pipeline." And as the interview continued, MSI gave some reasons there might be like trigger points for updates, basically, where it said anytime there's a major or meaningful processor update that could change the performance in a way that's relevant, and the plan would be to make a new version of its Claw. These handhelds exist in a space between sort of traditional handheld consoles like the Nintendo Switch, and then obviously full-on gaming laptops, with the former being more of a convenience and the latter being less convenient, lower battery life, but obviously more powerful. Forerunners like the Aya Neo and GPD, and then later the Valve Steam Deck really sparked something with handhelds, and it seems like everyone is running full speed with it. So we're seeing a lot of mobile solutions as well, APUs, CPUs, things with IGPs. There's another leak to talk about this week, and this time it's a liquid cooler from the Scythe. It's not the bad kind of leak, as in the cooler leaks. It's a news leak, and this is interesting because as far as we're aware, Scythe hasn't done a liquid cooler in something like over a decade, and that time it was an Asetek rebadge. This time it's different though. 9550 Pro on Twitter posted some photos of the unannounced cooler they called the GT360. This is very likely a prototype, so all of the details may not be final. The most obviously different thing about this is the pump in line with one of the tubes. This approach is also not fully unique, but it's particularly bulky here, encased in what looks like an aluminum shroud. Putting the pump in the tube instead of the block completely avoids any patents that Asetek holds for pump and block design. Other companies jump through hoops like separating the pump from the block into separate chambers within the housing, things like that. That said, Asetek's patent protections will expire soon. As for the block, it's a big slab of metal with two mounting holes and the tubes coming straight out the top of one side. There's a removable top piece, which has a shiny circle in the middle that might be a display, following the trend of coolers with screens on them. Back to those tubes, the fittings strongly resemble a standard compression design for soft tubing. Since the tubes pictured here look like EPDM rubber or something, it's possible that Scythe is going for an expandable design. We're not sure about that part. Several other companies, though, have tried it in the past. So, for example, the EK, I think it was the Phoenix line. There's another one, too. The AlphaCool's Ice Bear line. The idea has never caught on in a massively successful way. Price usually has been the restrictive factor for products like that, and then just long-term support as well. I actually have a EK Phoenix set up in one of my work machines here, and I'm not really that happy with it, just because in terms of maintenance, it becomes a problem for replacing parts. Anyway, we don't know exactly what this cooler is going to be priced for, or if it'll even get launched in the US, but we'll definitely be following it because Scythe's been producing some pretty interesting stuff since the Fuma 2 release. It's been a while now. EKWB is announcing a new version of its Nucleus 360 CLC. While we're talking about liquid coolers, this is specifically designed for direct die contact and on LGA 1700 Intel CPUs. The main difference is a special cold plate. So this is designed around specifically direct contact only on the die area of the CPU. EK also includes a pack of thermal grizzly conductonaut liquid metal for use between the die and the cold plate. It's going to cost $184, which is definitely on the high side for a closed loop liquid cooler, but unfortunately it's becoming a common sort of price point now. It's less than building a whole custom loop and setting up direct die at least, but EK previously launched the direct die version of its quantum velocity squared water block for $220. That's more expensive than the CLC, and the CLC includes 3 fans, a pump, and a radiator, so the price is definitely better there. All this positions this cooler in a potentially interesting place for an enthusiast wanting to maximize cooling on a lower budget than custom loop. The cooler comes with a contact frame to hold the delidded CPU in place of the stock ILM, but doesn't come with the actual delitter tool. That costs $86 standalone if you get one from EK. There are other options on the market as well for cheaper. It also comes with 2 interchangeable covers for the pump block, one with a special skull design and one that's plain black. The skull is obviously the right choice. That way people on the internet can know how badass you are just from looking at pictures of your build. One major potential downside, if this is something you care about, is a lack of any guarantees for compatibility with future CPUs, just because it's specifically designed for LGA 1700 solutions, and it's totally possible that Intel's next solutions are not compatible in some way. But if you're the type of person who just kind of buys it and uses the system for, say, 5 years, maybe less of a concern for you because you're probably replacing everything at that point. Anyway, this is a really brief one. Arctic has some news on a white version of its P12 Max fans. So this is, there's no RGB, there's no screen, there's no transparent window into eternity. It's just a new fluid dynamic bearing, and then white. The existing black version of the P12 Max fan uses dual ball bearings, and versus those, the white version with the FDB should be quieter. We recently uploaded our tour of a bearing factory and covered the intricate step-by-step process of how bearings like these are made. It involves lots of washing, and being in the factory sounds like you're inside the world's largest pinball machine. Back to the fan though, and you should definitely check that video out if you haven't seen it. Max RPM is listed at 3,300, so it's probably capable of moving a lot of air for the trade-off of high noise, no matter what bearing it uses. It's already available on Amazon for $15, which is $5 more than the black version. Between the higher quality bearing and the white PC component tax, it makes some sense and still comes out cheaper than a lot of high-end fans in the market. Arctic has earned a reputation at this point for offering high cost-effective fans and coolers in the past few years, so it's interesting to see the company start to dabble in more aesthetically focused or what the industry might brand as premium products. Up next, the world of intellectual property is often a complex and exciting topic, if you like lawsuits, and this one is about Take-Two Interactive, the parent company of game developer Rockstar, and Remedy, because they both use the letter R. Take-Two's lawyers claimed that Remedy's updated R logo might result in, quote, confusion on part of the public, and filed the issue with the UK and EU governments last year. Now, if you look at the letters, they share no resemblance other than the letter R, so let me check if that can be trademarked.
Hello?
Hey, I have a legal question for you.
Sure, Steve. What's up?
Can you trademark the letter R?
I mean, is it heavily stylized? Or, because if not, then no.
Okay, thanks. Bye. It's gonna be billable hours, so. We'd love to say this is a joke, but it's not. This is actually something Take-Two thought was worth their time to go address. As for reasons why they might do that, we think it's because they're having trouble seeing past the incomprehensibly large piles of money they've gotten from GTA 5. Whatever chunk they devoted to GTA 6 clearly wasn't enough to clear it down. Down here on Earth, though, it's easy to see that those logos are nothing alike. Despite Take-Two's aggression, Take-Two and Remedy have already worked it out. Remedy gave a statement to Polygon about the issue, saying, quote, "There is nothing to see here. This was a discussion," okay, between our teams that was resolved entirely and amicably late last year. Unfortunately, it took a little longer to complete than we had hoped due to some holiday scheduling. The legal filing was simply an initial formality, and Remedy and Take-Two continue to work together in partnership. We assume part of the reason why the companies handled this so quickly, other than the fact that it's basically meritless, is because they're working together on remakes of Max Payne 1 and 2, so that probably would have been a little bit awkward. Would have loved to hear what happened in the boardroom or the meeting rooms when Remedy found the news. Speaking of video game companies maybe overstepping, Ubisoft recently found itself in controversy for statements about subscription models in video games and for video game purchasing. We'd love to read the Forbes article on it, but we couldn't find the article on this page, so we went to PC Gamer. We couldn't find the article on that page either. Ubisoft Director of Subscriptions Philippe Tremblay recently did an interview with GamesIndustry.biz with the main quote getting picked up on the internet relating to comfort as a consumer with not owning a product. The full quote provides some helpful information. It starts like this, quote, "I don't have a crystal ball, but when you look at the different subscription services that are out there, we've had a rapid expansion over the last couple of years. It's relatively small compared to other models. We're seeing expansion on console as the likes of PlayStation and Xbox bring new people in. On PC, from a Ubisoft standpoint, it's already been great, but we're looking to reach out more on PC, so we see opportunity there." The quote continued, "One of the things we saw is that gamers are used to, a little bit like DVD, having and owning their games. That's the consumer shift that needs to happen. They got comfortable not owning their CD collection or DVD collection. That's a transformation that's been a bit slower to happen in games. As gamers grow comfortable in that aspect, you don't lose your progress. If you resume your games at another point in time, your progress file is still there. It's not been deleted. You don't lose what you've built in the game or your engagement with the game. So it's about feeling comfortable with not owning your game." It's a little bit more here just to give the full context. Quote, "I still have 2 boxes of DVDs. I definitely understand the gamer's perspective with that. But as people embrace that model, they see that these games will exist, the service will continue, and you'll be able to access them when you feel like. That's reassuring. Streaming is also a thing that works really well with subscription, so you pay when you need it as opposed to paying all the time. Lots of things wrong with that, lots of flaws in that logic. First of all, there's absolutely no guarantee that, quote, the service will continue, or that, quote, these games will exist, or that, quote, you'll be able to access them when you feel like. And in fact, there is precedent directly proving otherwise. So that was not factually correct to say at all. Also, you do literally pay all the time. That is the point of the subscription model. We've seen that companies will delete save game progress as accounts age and fall out of whatever threshold there is for indicating, hey, I'm an active player, don't delete my stuff. So there's precedent for that as well. Frankly, it's also a complete fantasy to think that a subscription to a game is continued past the player's immediate desire to play it for any reason other than an emotional attachment to the progress in that game, a sentimental value of the character in that game, and a fear that it's all going to go away if they stop paying for the subscription. So it is intrinsically a manipulative tactic to continue to extract money from something. People who continue MMO subscriptions, for example, and I've been one of these in the past, well past when you're actually playing the game actively, you tend to continue it because either you think, I'm going to try and play it this week, or you are just fearful that you're going to lose it, or you have a sentimental attachment to it. You've put 10 years into this game, and you want to make sure it doesn't go away. Now, the difference with MMOs, which have changed over the years, but traditionally were on that model, is that, one, they tend to be a maybe 1 or 2 game selection of your entire library, rather than literally everything. And 2, they're not single player. So it makes a little more sense, a little more defensible on it. But to apply that to all games, especially the single player ones, is nothing other than just greed. The biggest flaw with all of this logic is that, unlike a TV show or a movie, these forms of media have a clear endpoint of consumption. And while you may want to go back and watch it again at some point, if it was the only media for which you subscribed to that service, and there are many now, you can safely unsubscribe to it. There is no progress to save, there's no hope that the company will remain in business perpetually, and there's no need for them to continue servicing that media other than to hopefully host it, and we'll talk about that. Unlike games where there is a need for continual service on it in many of these scenarios. So there's also precedent for companies killing entire libraries of games or games standalone, and that fuels the anxiety that repels people from subscription services for things like single-player titles, because there have been instances where it just goes away. And the final point here is that the barrier to entry for finding TV shows and movies elsewhere, even if a service is terminated, also makes it a lot easier to accept the fact that one day it may not be officially served by the original service on which you found it. Assuming that license isn't sold to another service, you can probably get it somewhere else pretty easily. It's just a video file, basically. Whereas with games, especially console games, on a platform that now is becoming increasingly internet connected at a hardware level, you end up with issues with piracy being a lot more challenging, for example, and there are more barriers to feed the concerns that it may truly just disappear one day, and even going a path of questionable legality may not be available to you. And this is a problem with things like publishers getting bored of titles because they don't make millions of dollars anymore, so now there's less impetus to support it. Anyway, that's the Ubisoft rant. You can subscribe to my rants through my new subscription service. And if you stop paying for them, then the ranting, well, it'll still continue. You just won't be privy to it. Okay, so that's it for the news this week. Thanks for watching. As always, subscribe for more. Not that kind, not the subscription service kind like the YouTube. It's free. It's a button you can click on. Let's move on. You can go to store.gamersnexus.net to support us directly. Thanks for watching. Check back for the next GP reviews. There's a lot of them coming up, and we'll see you all next time.